And this is where you're going to be in a situation where a coin toss is everything. Unless Deshaun Jackson can pull off the Brian Westbrook.
You know, Coach Reed asked me before the game, he's like, man, what you think about punt return? What do you want to do? And I told him, you know, if we need it, and it's, you know, the game is tight or it's close, just put me back there.
I wanted to make sure he was there at the end.
He whistled, and I looked up, because you know that whistle's from Coach Reed. He said, get your butt back there.
And Deshaun Jackson has not returned one for a touchdown this year.
There is no bigger single home run hitter, game-breaking player than number 10, Deshaun Jackson.
I told him, I said, hey,
Love these cleats.
you run this back, I got some money for you. I told him I got some cheese for you.
14 seconds to go. 31-31.
Sitting back there, pumped up, you know, just asking for him, you know, putting my hands up to him, come on, bring it on, bring it on.
And it's a line drive kick.
I'm just sitting back there and thinking to myself, like, they're really not going to kick it to me.
Tom Coughlin was on the field screaming to the punter, telling him to kick it out of bounds.
Well, I wasn't sure they were going to punt to him.
I thought he was going to kick the ball out of bounds.
Why would he kick it to Deshaun?
For them to kick it to him, thank you.
I was happy they did, man.
They was on their own from there.
Jackson bobbles it and now has to try and recover.
And it got to me, and I fumbled it.
Drops the ball.
I kind of panicked a little bit.
People that needed to converge on him when he fumbled it, converge.
So I guess that kind of bought me time to set it up and do what I had to do.
When you give Deshaun space, he's the most creative football player.
Had he not fumbled it, I guarantee we've been overtime right now.
Picks it up. Look for running room. He's at the 20.
From there, I just saw the huge crease.
Deshaun Jackson at this point is the human joystick.
Stuck my foot right in the ground.
Put the Jake brake on.
And it looked like a pretty good alley to the right.
And he just took off with a purpose.
Nobody's going to catch me.
And Deshaun Jackson is Deshaun Jackson.
Gets a block. Are you kidding?
Believe it or not, Deshaun Jackson couldn't have did it by himself.
Can't say enough about Jason Avant's huge hit.
Jason Avant had a monster block out there.
Ken is one of the most amazing athletes I've ever seen. And once he gets past a couple guys, I don't think anybody in this country can catch him.
The rest was history from there.
Unbelievable.
I remember watching Deion put the ball up in the air, so you know, I was like, I'm gonna get my Deion, and that's what I did. I really wanted to do something crazy.
I was like, get your butt in the end zone. You know,
I probably would have dove in from the 20-yard line if I had some wings.
He wanted that clock on 0, and that's okay.
The first ever walk-off punt return for a touchdown to win a game.
That capped off the greatest comeback in the history of the Eagles franchise.
This is the greatest I've ever seen. A historic game. Couldn't have written it up any better.
I think it's even surpasses that Westbrook game.
And everybody's just running up to me, grabbing me, and doing this and doing that.
I was jumping up and down screaming. My heart's a little weaker after this one.
This is one of those plays that we're going to be talking about for years and years to come.
You know, it's for my pops, man. Rest in peace. You know, I did everything for him. You know, I know he's watching for me. That's why I still got this jersey on right now, man. It's for pops, baby.
Hello and welcome to the Eagle Eye Focus Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Louis Deeby, and today we're going to be talking a lot about the Eagles quarterback battle with Kwame Fisher-Jones, who's part of the BackpageSportsRadio.com, also .comSportsTV.com, and he wrote an interesting piece about Dennis Dixon and why he should be the Eagles' starting quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see when he comes on his insight on the quarterback job. I'm just going to talk about it real quick. Today is the first full-team veterans practice for the Eagles, and it's pretty interesting to see what they're going to do with Michael Vick, obviously still there as the veteran guy who started for the past couple of years. I'm just going to dive into this real quick while we're waiting for Kwame. So you have him, obviously. You have Matt Barkley, who was their fourth-round pick this year out of USC, who last year people were saying was a first-round pick. And then you also have Nick Foles, who last year was actually very impressive. So, I mean, because last year, look what the team he had. I mean, the team was a disaster when he came in, and he really, yes, he only did win one game, but he was actually very productive, I think. And I think that, I mean, yeah, people are saying he might not fit the scheme well, but I don't know about that. I don't know how accurate that is. I think Chip Kelly's going to mold it around whoever actually wins the job, because if you're saying Nick Foles or Matt Barkley are going to win the job, then I think definitely, I mean, he should be on it. I mean, if you're going to say they're winning, you're not going to be doing the read option. That's just my opinion. But then I think if Michael Vick or Dennis Dixon wins the job, then you're definitely going to be having one of them as a read option quarterback, especially Dennis Dixon, I think, because he was with Chip Kelly in Oregon, and he was actually very good with the read option. So, I mean, that's that. Plus, I mean, so he's on right now. We're pleased to be joined by pleased to be joined by Kwame Fisher-Jones. Kwame, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. So let's get right into it about the Eagles quarterback battle. Who do you think, honestly, has the advantage going into today's first full team practice? Obviously, you have veteran Michael Vick, Nick Foles, Matt Barkley, and Dennis Dixon. Who do you think has the advantage?
Well, advantage question is tough because who's going to get the most snaps? It'll probably be Vick, and then Foles will probably come in a close second. But as far as who I think is better equipped to run the team and who I think is going to win the job, it's going to be Dennis Dixon. But as far as advantage, I would say snaps perspective, it would definitely be Vick and Foles. And the fans' advantage, I would say, would be Matt Barkley. So it depends on which way you go with advantage.
All right, let's talk about Michael Vick real quick before we get into Dennis Dixon, because I also agree with you that he should be the front runner. In my opinion, he, to me, is the best fit. But let's talk a little bit about veteran Michael Vick. If he doesn't win the job this year, do you see him making the roster? Obviously, the Eagles brought him back for another year, paid him a good amount of money, though. Do you think that they'll use him as trade bait maybe and maybe trade him before the season starts, or do you think they'll keep him as a backup, saying he doesn't win the starting quarterback job?
You know, I got that question yesterday. I don't know who's going to trade for Michael Vick because the fact of the matter is he's not a backup quarterback. And so if he doesn't win the job in Philadelphia, which I don't think he'll do, you know, I think the Eagles owe it to him to release him. And once they release him, then he can sign anywhere. So if you're a team-hungry quarterback and none come to mind, you know, you bring Vick in to see what he can do, maybe Jacksonville. But, you know, it's tough to say. It's tough to say what you would expect him to do from the start because or what you would expect the team to trade for him because, quite frankly, no one's going to trade for Michael Vick unless you know, maybe a 7th-round pick or something like that, which doesn't make much sense. So I can't see him being traded, but I definitely think he plays in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, obviously, probably maybe Jacksonville's probably the best fit besides the Eagles, probably because, Gabbard and Chad Henne are not better options. But let's talk about Dennis Dixon, the quarterback that the Eagles brought in. He's very familiar with Chip Kelly as he was his first quarterback in Oregon when Chip Kelly was the offensive coordinator. He's now brought into the Eagles for a year to see what he can do. He knows the read option. He knows the system, even though it is a bit different, obviously, since it's in the NFL. I'm personally a big fan of him, and you wrote an article on your website about how he should be starting quarterback. Just talk a little bit about what Dixon could bring to the table if he starts.
Well, the first thing he brings is the confidence and the familiarity with the system. It's not just the fact. It's not like a it's not like a Danny Warfield, Steve Spurrier type situation where he just knows the system and he'll come in. This is a guy who had overwhelming success at Oregon, and then when he went into the NFL was coached by two of the best quarterback minds in the NFL. When you look at a guy like Bruce Arians, who he had for 4 years in Pittsburgh, then Jim Caldwell, they've had overwhelming success in the NFL. So he spent 5 years being coached by two of the best minds, 4 years behind one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and he's going into a situation for the first time in his career where he has an opportunity to not only start but to have a little bit of success because he's familiar with the system. When you look at what Barkley, Foles, and Vick, they're trying to learn a system. What they're trying to do, Dixon's already done. They're trying to get to know, Dixon already knows. So he doesn't need the overwhelming amount of snaps. He doesn't need the abundance of publicity coming in. All he needs is a couple preseason snaps. And now you have a situation where Vick's best attribute is running. He can't run in preseason. He'll get hurt. So he's not that good at throwing the ball. He doesn't make quick decisions. And, you know, so it sets up perfectly for Dixon. But the biggest thing that Dixon would bring is no turnovers. Vick had 21 turnovers in 10 games. Foles, for all his might, is still a guy that turned the ball over somewhat. Dixon isn't a high turnover. He's not a high fumbler, first and foremost. He may have interceptions here and there, but he's not a high turnover guy. So he gives you ball security, so he doesn't put the defense in a bad situation from the opening snap in conjunction with the poor special teams play. Dixon will make good decisions. He may not have the strongest arm. I'm not saying he's going to come out and win a Super Bowl for you, but what he'll do is he won't lose a game for you, and he can also make some of the explosive plays that Michael Vick used to be able to make while running the ball.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, everything you said. I think it's a perfect point. Honestly, I think, like you said, I mean, this is his best opportunity and might be his only opportunity to come in, like you said, have some success. But obviously he has the mobility like Michael Vick does. But if you see Michael Vick making the roster, does that mean Dennis Dixon does as well? Because you do have Foles and Barkley, and honestly, I think Barkley is a lock to make the roster, in my opinion. But do you think that because at first you were saying, Foles, Dixon and Vick pair up perfectly together in case one of them gets hurt, the other one can come in with the system that Chip Kelly runs. But do you think now that Vick is battling for the job, do you think that they both can make the roster?
What you mean, Dixon and Vick? No, I don't.
Yeah,
that's a tough question. Because the first thing, you're instinctively you say no because but if Vick makes the roster, and you're assuming he makes it as a starter, looking at that logically, the powers that be know the likelihood of Vick's playing more than 10 games in the season is slim to none. So you keep Foles around. And if you keep Foles, then you keep Barkley as well, obviously, because you want to see what Barkley can do for you, and he may or may not be the quarterback for the future. So at that point, then it doesn't make sense to keep Dennis Dixon. But if you can chuck him on the practice squad, I would say that they're able to keep him because he did stay on the practice squad for Baltimore for the duration of the season, and he was able during the Super Bowl week to help the Ravens as he played the role as Colin Kaepernick on the scout team for him. And their coach, the defensive coordinator Donald Pease, actually said that Dixon played the role perfectly for them. So there was a little bit of buzz coming on about him going into the offseason. So I can't see them being able to successfully tuck him into a practice squad, but you never know. Quarterback position is fickle when you don't have that big eye-popping name like a Michael Vick. Michael Vick gets released or Michael Vick doesn't make the Eagles. There's no doubt in my mind he's starting on somebody's roster at some point in the season. Dennis Dixon, on the other hand, I don't know because if he's not able to win this job, this is the perfect situation for him. I mean, in Pittsburgh, he was never gonna unseat Ben Roethlisberger. There were whispers in Baltimore, but Flacco had an unbelievable season. Being coached by Jim Caldwell, then goes through the playoffs as Caldwell's the offensive coordinator, doesn't throw an interception throughout the whole playoffs. You know what I mean? There was no chance Dixon was going to get a shot in Baltimore. This is perfect for him. This is if he doesn't do it here, I can't see him doing it anywhere else.
Yeah, totally right. Because you're not going to unseat Roethlisberger, and like you said, Flacco. Probably the worst timing for Dixon. Obviously, he might have had a shot, but like you said, this is his best opportunity. And I like the quote you had in your article saying how he should be the starting quarterback week one solely because he's unknown. And I really like that point because honestly, he hasn't been given a chance to play all that much. He started, 3 games, I believe, before he tore his ACL against the Titans that year. Ben Roethlisberger was suspended, I believe, just going off the top of my head. So I think that, those are totally really good points. But what about Matt Barkley? Do you think he has a chance to start? Because Vick and Foles, I think, are the leading top guys, and obviously Dennis Dixon, too, who we've just talked about. Does Matt Barkley have a good chance to maybe unseat them and start week one?
No, I can't see that happening. Yeah. Just because it makes when you start a rookie week one and you got a team that's coming off a horrific year the way the Eagles had, and not just record-wise, everything that went wrong for the Eagles, everything that went wrong for them that could quite possibly go wrong went wrong for them. Everything. No, there was no there's no one piece, one player, one facet that you can look at and say, you know what? Well, at least this played well. Everybody wants to talk about Bryce Brown. Bryce Brown fumbled the ball every second of every play. It felt like. So you're coming into a new situation. You can't start Barkley, and that's one of the reasons why they re-signed it. Kelly said in the press conference that when you look at the landscape of the quarterbacks out there, he was the best one available. So it wasn't so much, and this is his exact words. He's got a good skill set, but you also have to take in consideration what else was available. So I think that as much as that's not a swimming endorsement for Vic, I also don't think that Kelly's going to unleash the reins or give the reins to a Matt Barkley. Not while he's trying to gain the trust of the other 52 men on the roster. Maybe week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10, that's definitely a possibility. But this late in the season or that early in the season, no, because you'll lose the other guys on the roster.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think, Two, I like the point that, I mean, you can't put a rookie in after what happened last season. I definitely agree with you. Hopefully Bryce Brown can hang on to the football this year. I mean, because he was, pretty productive if he could have just hung on to the football. But, so, before I let you go, the Eagles last year were a 4-win team. So, there's no saying that they are that they're in the front runners like last year in the offseason. People are saying, yeah, they're the front runner to win the division. This time, people are saying they're last. How many wins do you think is reasonable for the Eagles this win? Granted, say Dennis Dixon starts, because you're the only one that I could find that agrees with me with the points that Dennis Dixon should start for all the reasons you said. Everyone's saying, yeah, Vic and Foles are the two names they're going to start. How many wins do you think is very reasonable for the Eagles to win this season? They have a pretty tough schedule.
Man, that's the question of the day. It's a great question, because I've
gotta
given it thought that, there's no way, if you're going to pull a training day on me, I'm going to say anywhere between 5 to 7, but there's no way to tell, because their opening game, if RG3 doesn't play all preseason, and you're going to go game one opening night, first week of the season with the Eagles' new coach, I can't see Washington, and I know everyone is just chalking that up as a Washington win. I don't think Washington wins that game. If RG3 doesn't play a snap in preseason, Washington's not going to beat the Eagles, because the only they have on offense is all they have is RG3, and the Redskins ran roughshod over the Eagles last season. It was bad. It was as bad as I've seen in quite some time, and a lot of players that are still here are going to remember that. And you're going to tell me that a guy's going to walk basically off of the gurney table from James Andrews' office and walk on the field and roast a team that is ready, primed, and ready to go, and at least has some sort of hope going into the season? I can't see that happening. And then now, so that's one win that people aren't anticipating. Obviously, they play Denver early on. They're going to get smoked in Denver. But you don't know what the Cowboys are going to do this year. They always seem to split with the Giants. I'm going to, anywhere between 5 and 7 wins, I think.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think it matters. I want to see what things are put in place. Andy Reid's first year was not a great year as far as wins or losses, but he made a lot of good moves that season. Then they come back in the offseason, and I believe that was the offseason they brought. I want to say they brought in John Runyon, not that year. But that was one of the things Reid was able to do. And another thing that no one's talking about, and it's just as far as record and overall play, one of Andy Reid's best moves the moment he came into town was to sign Brian Mitchell, kind of to solidify that special teams. Our special teams was atrocious last year. Kelly hasn't done anything that I've seen or heard of, and I'm doing some research on that now, to really solidify the special teams. There has to be some point, some side, whether it be defense, offense, or special teams, where the Eagles can say, they're one of the better teams in the league before they can become a complete total team. It has to be one facet of the game where you say this is one of those two that say this is where they're strong at before they can come strong everywhere else. And Reid's first moves was solidifying that special teams with David Akers, Brian Mitchell. He signed a couple other guys that were just solely special teams guys. And the Eagles were, and obviously they had Harbaugh as a coach, were one of the best special teams in the league from the moment Reid got to the field. Then it kind of tapered off when they lost Harbaugh.
Yeah.
That's something I need to see from Kelly. He needs to solidify one side of the ball, whether it be offense, defense, or special teams. Then you'll be able to say, okay, well, they'll be able to win a game here, a game there. But I'm going to go 5 and 7 to answer your question.
All right, yeah, and I think too. I think that's a good point, solidifying one of the sides. And I think the best chance might be offense, as he is an offensive-minded coach. But there's just so many weapons on the offense. I just think that Kelly's system, I just think, might be able to work. And a lot of people are saying too, maybe Chip Kelly, his system might not work, and then he'll flame out in a couple of years if his offense doesn't work in the NFL, if defenses adjust to it. But I think, it is early, like you said, to tell. It's the first day of full team practices to tell. But I would say around 7 wins. Potentially this team could. If everything formed together, which I don't see happening. Like you said, Andy Reid didn't have a good. It wasn't a very successful first year win-loss wise. But I think, they could potentially be a 9-win team, in my opinion. But, so that's good stuff. So, Kwame Fisher-Jones, thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Good stuff.
No problem. You have a good one.
You too. All right, that's going to do it for today's Eagle Eye Focus podcast. Again, great stuff with Kwame Fisher-Jones, who is on BackpageSportsRadio.com, also .comSportsTV.com. Really good stuff there. I've actually been looking at his stuff. He's on ESPN New Hampshire. Really good story. I mean, just go check him out. Go check out his other website, JonesSportsWorld.com. That's where the Dennis Dixon article is. Finally, one person that agrees with me that Dennis Dixon should start. And for every single reason he said is exactly why I agree. I mean, almost he read my mind. That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, I'm sure he's been thinking this too since they started him. I've been rooting for this guy since he came in around May or March or whenever the Eagles signed him. So, I mean, yeah, great stuff there. So, again, that's going to do it. Thanks for joining me. Follow me on Twitter at DB Sports Talk for all your Eagles updates. Go follow Kwame Fisher-Jones for really good stuff at Jones Kwame, JonesKwame. Really good stuff again. I really enjoyed having him on. Probably one of the best guests I've had. So that's going to do it. Again, check out my articles at eaglesportstalk.blogspot.com. Check out my other articles at getrealfootball.com. And that's going to do it for us today. Eagles start full training camp today, full team practice. All the veterans are back. It's going to be fun. The NFL season is coming up, and we'll see you later.